So Chrystia Freeland, Cruella de Vil, is back in the news, ladies and gentlemen. She pretty much destroyed the nation of Canada under Justin Trudeau. She was the former deputy prime minister who exploited Canadians, money laundered for her cause in Ukraine. That's her little pet project. It's basically like how a Zionist is so influenced to do the greater Israeli project that they're willing to deceive Americans. This is her little pet project. She's willing to deceive a bunch of Canadians to siphon a bunch of money so that Ukraine can turn into this surveillance state, this, WEF vessel country, NATO exploitation, so they can go and defeat Russia and break that apart, which turns out they can't. And Russia is not backing down, which is why this whole thing started. But that's its own conversation that we've had numerous times before. I'm not going to reiterate again. But Chrystia Freeland was on Bill Maher's show. And I really don't know why. I don't know why. Chrystia Freeland, I guess Bill Maher, he did say once that he enjoyed her company once upon a time. I forget what guest it was. It was on his podcast show where Bill Maher said that, I like Chrystia Freeland. I like having conversations with her. So maybe that's it. Maybe Bill Maher's just too stupid to understand that this woman is a criminal, that she's criminally corrupted. And not only that, but she left Canada, exploited the people, deceived them, robbed them billions of dollars to throw over to Ukraine, and then accepted a job with Volodymyr Zelensky to be an advisor for Ukraine. So she's a traitor. She's a treasonist person. She is a career criminal. And Bill Maher allowed her to, once again, go back onto his show to have these mealy-mouthed conversations like she's a normal person. Like, oh, I just like talking to this person. I don't know anything about her. I've never done the background research to realize what a despicable human being she is. That I've told people for many years. God only knows why people still support her, but here, as Ace McQuaid points out, wow, caught some of the Chrystia Freeland Real Time with Bill Maher episode, and it was the most cringe-worthy TV I've seen in quite some time. What the actual F is she talking about? She can't even be sincere about child sex trafficking. She's perfect for Ukraine. So, Chrystia Freeland was asked about the Epstein files, because this would have been a week after the Epstein files got released, and Bill Maher brought this to conversation. And listen to her response about this. Again, this is a woman who deceived against Canadians, who is making it unaffordable for families to survive in the country because of overtaxation, because of the carbon taxes, because of the stranglehold they have on farmers to produce crops. They're causing a shortage. It's a supply trafficking, corruption. There's so much to reveal about this particular person. The fact that she, anyway, let's see what she says here, and then we'll discuss after, because it's really, really disgusting what she says here. It's really cringeworthy. Listen to this.
I do want to start with Epstein, because it's just, you can't get away from it, and you can't stop thinking about it. And I thought, since it is primarily about the abuse of women, you should just have the first say on this, and we won't say anything.
Wow, okay, thank you. I was actually going to insist on saying that if we didn't talk about women. So thank you very much, Bill.
I'd really insist if we didn't talk about women. I'd really insist if we didn't talk about that. Why? Why is that, Chrystia? Why would you not want to talk about the fact that for years, these higher up, influential people were trafficking young children to this island? Considering the fact that Chrystia Freeland was one of the people that talk highly about the residential schools. Isn't that kind of interesting? They talk about the residential schools. They talk about the importance, every child matters, but they don't want to talk about this. Interesting. Oh no, I don't want to bring up women. Let's move on the conversation. Let's talk about something else. What did Donald Trump tweet today? Can we talk about that? Let's hear it again.
I do want to start with Epstein because it's just you can't get away from it and you can't stop thinking about it. And I thought, since it is primarily about the abuse of women, you should just have the first say on this, and we won't say anything.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. I was actually going to insist on saying that if we didn't talk about women. So thank you very much, Bill. Yeah, it is. There are so many aspects to what we've heard from all of these Epstein emails and texts and emails he writes himself. But at the end of the day, it is a terrible story about what rich, powerful men, abetted by some women, do to vulnerable girls and young women. And we have to remember that. And it can be a little bit trendy right now to say, oh, feminism, it went too far. Do we need to now worry about the boys? And
what is she talking about? What is she talking about? So first she said, I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to include women in this specific matter. She was trying to dismiss it to get Bill Maher to move off the subject. Which, by the way, Bill Maher is forgetting the fact that it wasn't just girls. It was also boys, too. Like, the trafficking network is so sick, so terrifying, that these people are obviously trying to make light of this. They're trying to dismiss certain aspects of this because they don't want to reveal too much of the game, because they're part of this. Bill Maher has been a celebrity for 30, 40 years. He gets invited to the clubs. He gets invited to all these different places. He doesn't want to get kicked out. So of course he's going to dismiss it as, oh, yeah, it was just Jeffrey Epstein and, some underage girls. No, it was a slew of many individuals across the entire globe involved in this. That's the magnitude of all this. They're trying to undermine this purposely to make you think that it was only one person, just like Kash Patel, just like Dan Bongino. Oh, yeah, well, it was just Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and we can't do anything now because, Epstein, self-deleted himself. So, yeah, case closed. Shut up. Move on. You still talking about that hoax? I don't understand this answer. I don't understand. Like, there's many aspects about rich, powerful, and powerful men that are, eluded with women to round up underage people. But, do I think feminism talking about? What are you talking about? None of this makes sense. This is a word salad. This is classic Chrystia Freeland. I can't speak on the matter, so I'm just going to make up a slew of words, make it sound irrelevant to this conversation, even though it's completely worthless. I don't get this. I don't get this. So let me play this again in full, and I'll try not to stop.
I do want to start with Epstein because it's just you can't get away from it and you can't stop thinking about it. And I thought, since it is primarily about the abuse of women, you should just have the first say on this, and we won't say anything.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. I was actually going
to
insist on saying that if we didn't talk about women. So thank you very much, Bill. Yeah, it is. There are so many aspects to what we've heard from all of these Epstein emails and texts and emails he writes himself. But at the end of the day, it is a terrible story about what rich, powerful men, abetted by some women, do to vulnerable girls and young women. And we have to remember that. And it can be a little bit trendy right now to say, oh, feminism, it went too far. Do we need to now worry about the boys? And I have a son, I worry about him. But I think reading all of this horrible stuff should say to us, we need feminism, we need to stand up for girls and young women.
Huh? Does anyone understand that? Does anyone understand that? So, the Epstein files getting released, all the aspects of these rich, powerful men and women colluding, causing this conspiracy. That's why we still need to do feminism. You know, that was created by BlackRock, by the same satanic people involved in this. I just don't have words for this. I don't have words for this. This is like, it's such mockery at this point. It's such mockery. It's such a laughable thing that Bill Maher is even bringing attention to this. Because, of course, Chrystia Freeland's never actually going to respond accordingly to this. She's not going to be concerned about... Why? Because she's part of it. She's part of it. Mark Carney, our prime minister, is on the Epstein list about 70 times. Justin Trudeau, same thing. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the former prime minister, Justin Trudeau's father, is a known trafficker. Him and Rockefeller went to Belgium. That was discussed by Nicky Lucas, who was a longtime survivor, wrote many books documenting Pierre Elliott Trudeau and the Rockefellers and so many disgustful people. That was back in the 70s. Here we are in 2026, still dealing with this. It's still happening to this day. No one's being prosecuted. No one's being caught. No one's being brought to attention on this. After all this information getting revealed, no one's rioting. No one's complaining. No one's just fed up with this, as they should be. They should be not, listening to Chrystia Freeland and Bill Maher and Chris Christie here. Who, by the way, just the way he applauds there. So enthused, yeah. Can we go to break? Because I want to go to craft services again. That's what Chris Christie's thinking. I heard there was food on this production. Where's the trucks? This is just stupid. This is honestly just stupid, insulting, and gross. Because we know these people are involved. They're involved in the cover-up. They're involved in knowing. They're complicit with the Epstein files, the scandal, the trafficking. They know about this for years. They're colluding with these people. And here they are going on these talk shows pretending like, oh, well, I actually give a damn because I hear people are giving a damn, so I don't want to lose my reputation. Yeah, there's many aspects of this, but the important thing is feminism. We need these girls to stand up. Yeah, these girls were standing up, and the boys, and the people victimized by all this, and you shun them out. All of you shunned them out. Again, I just find it so amazing. Chrystia Freeland, who did so much disgusting stuff to this country of Canada. So much disgust, so much just abhorrent criminal corruption she's done for the people of Canada, goes off to Ukraine to smuggle with a foreign entity. Because, hey, once you destroy one country, you just go to the next one. That's what Mark Carney taught us. He practically destroyed England, the economy. That's according to the former Prime Minister, Liz Truss. And now is ruining our country. It just amazes me. It amazes me that they can go on to these talk shows and pretend that, oh, we actually give a damn about, horrific things, but in the end, I'm not actually going to talk about how horrific this is, or actually, respond accordingly by saying that these people should be apprehended, there should be prosecutions, there should be investigations, this should be brought to the attention nonstop. I mean, they should do 24-hour segments exposing just the utmost disgust of Jeffrey Epstein being connected to all these different intels, all these different agencies, the entire sinister system that controls over us. And there's more to this. So here is Chrystia Freeland now discussing about Mark Carney's speech at Davos. You remember that iconic speech that Mark Carney said about how the New World Order is ending and the old ways, the rules-based order is ending. And people were applauding up and down, thinking like, oh, look, globalism's dead. Yay! Yay, we did it. We took down the New World Order. Failing to realize that it's not ending. They're just passing the baton onto the technocrats. You're still getting globalism. You're still getting the New World Order. What do you think digital IDs are about? What do you think? The surveillance state, Palantir, Alex Carr, Peter Thiel, the suppressing of speech. What do you think that's all part of? Because the technocrats are wanting this. The old-style banker billionaires want this. The other globalists want this. They're all colluding together. So, again, this is what people have to understand. This is what people are still struggling to fathom when it comes to Epstein. They're all colluding together. There's no left versus right. There's no difference between politicians. Bill Clinton was friends with Donald Trump. Bill Clinton was the one that told Donald Trump to run in the first place. So the fact that Democrats and Republicans is some, binary choice is ridiculous. Because they all work for the same masters. They all work for the same overlords. And that's why Chrystia Freeland is not going to say a word about this, because she's part of the club. She's part of the inside intel. And if she reveals something about this, well, there goes her chances of political fame and stardom now that she's restarted herself in Ukraine, which has been her destiny this whole time. And of course, Bill Maher's not going to respond to it because he's a Hollywood schmuck. He wants to still get invited to these parties. He still wants to, schmooze with the A-list celebrities that can go on his show that nobody watches. I don't know who still pays HBO the $12.95 a month to watch this crap. It's ridiculous. But anyway, so here's Chrystia Freeland responding to mentioning about the Davos speech. Listen.
So anyway, do you agree that he said, Prime Minister Mark Carney said that we're witnessing a rupture in the world order? He gave a very powerful speech at Davos a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure Trump didn't like that, but it seemed to be...
Yeah, powerful speech. Like the speech that Greta Thunberg gave to the billionaires. Remember that? Remember people, thought it was so amazing until they realized, wait a second, there's a reason why this little girl from Sweden is talking directly to the billionaires in this fashion and not being tracked down or captured or being sent away to prison. There's a reason for that. It's because it's make-believe. It's like Mark Carney made you believe that, oh yes, globalism's dead. Now this, freedom-loving, faith-loving, conservatism is taking over. Oh, wait a second. It's the other side of globalism. You friggin' idiots. That's why I told people not to jump up and down for Mark Carney's speech, because globalism isn't dead. It's changing ownership. That's what's happening here. It's just changing ownership to a technocratic state, and it's going to be worse. It's going to be worse. You're going to have mass surveillance. You're going to have that same one world government, only this time it's going to be coordinated with AI agents and robots. So be prepared for that, folks. Don't think that this is the end of this, new world. No, it's changing hands. That's why I never found Mark Carney's speech impressive. Because obviously they allowed him to say this. They allowed him to say that we lied to you. Why else would they allow him to say that? Oh, because you've already transferred over. You already got the new owners. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Anyway, see the rest.
Saying to a lot of the world, as you said before, we can't rely on the United States. And we seem to be driving China, into the other countries, rather, into
driving
the arms of China.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an old song, I want to be around to pick up the pieces when somebody breaks your heart. Well, we broke a lot of hearts, and China's like, I'm going to pick up the pieces.
I think it was a brilliant speech. I think it was really, really important. And I think it's really sad. And, I would say to you, influential Americans, to Americans here, we really like you. Like, Canadians like America.
Yeah.
We do actually.
Oh, I know.
And we respect.
And why?
I love how she just we like you guys. To all the influence, we really like you guys. So why does Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney, and the rest of the politicians, when they come back here, tell us, no, we hate America. We hate Donald Trump. We don't want to deal anything with the United States. We need to move on. The relationship is over. So why do they keep lying to us? Why do they keep lying to us if they'll go on American television and say, we like you guys. We like you guys. Are you freaking kidding me? You're freaking kidding me. You lied to us on the regular. That's why we're in this mess. That's why we still have this trade nightmare that we're still living with, which I believe is all manufactured from the get-go. Because clearly we could have resolved this easily. We could have resolved this on day one, but they want to keep this going for some sick, twisted reason, whether it's for political reasons, for Mark Carney to gain support with the elbows up cheap, or just to, find a way to take shots at Donald. I don't know what it is. But clearly, they're trying to manufacture the consent to keep the trade war going. As I stated, that this could have been easily resolved. We could have just demanded our leaders to get together in the room and resolve this easily. But no, we gotta make this narrative about how Canadians gotta be, done with America. And I love how stupid that is, how hypocritical that is, because A, you have politicians that appear regular on American media to talk about this. How stupid can you be to believe that they hate America when they're going on places like Bill Maher or MS Now or any of these other outlets? Doug Ford, who's an anti-Trumper, anti-American person, goes on CNN frequently. Why is that the case? Oh, that's right. He's lying to you. Just like this one is lying to you. Just like all of them have lied to you. Honestly, the charade has to stop. I know there's still some people out there that are still going to believe this garbage because A, they won't do their own research. B, they, emotionally fragile to think that their superheroes like Chrystia Freeland are deceitful liars, so they don't want to give up that. Or they just want to feel like they fit in somewhere. They want to be part of the cult. They want to be part of some cliche. I want to be in the liberal side of things. I want to be in the conservative side of things. Why? At this point, don't even bother. Because both sides are the same, are just two sides of the same coin. Same disgusting, deceitful coin that is willing to abuse you left, right, and center, no matter who you are in this world. Because you are the peasants, you are the cows that line up to the slaughterhouse to serve the masters like Chrystia Freeland. And I wouldn't give this woman time of day in my entire life because of how deceitful this particular woman is. He's more.
Wouldn't you? We're still fucking awesome.
Actually, you are awesome.
Yeah.
And you have done
Actually, you guys are awesome. Why is this is like torture? This is literally like torture. Because I'm sure you turn on the CBC right now, they're making excuses of how America is so awful and how America is just disgusting and deprived and whatnot. And, the American government is no picnic. The Canadian government is no picnic. No government in the world is going to be a day in the park. Let's just be honest about that. But I'm not angry at Americans. I'm not angry at what America has given us. Just like I'm not angry at Canadians. They are my brothers and sisters of this country. I'm not going to be angry at my neighbors. I'm going to be angry at the people that deceive me to make me believe that my neighbors are the problem. Like her. Like this woman.
much as a country.
Yes.
And the world, especially the world's democracies, will be really much poorer if you guys don't get your act together. Because a world in which we need to start relying on China, this is not a world where human rights matter.
Yeah.
This is not a world where democracy matters. And
oh, God. Here we go. Here we go. Classic neoliberal trope right there. You guys need to get your act together, because if we have to side with China, my God, the human rights abuses, the deprive of democracy. You want democracy to die? That's why we got to do the things that we do. That's why we got to be the insidious effing goddamn MFers in the world, because democracy is going to die. That's why you got to vote for us. You got to bend your knee to us. You got to surrender your will like cows going to the slaughterhouse. You have to, because democracy is going to die. I hate to break the news to you. Democracy's already dead. Democracy died when Klaus Schwab openly stated that he penetrated Trudeau's cabinets with members like her. Because let's face it, she has no talent, she has no ability, she has no leadership qualities. So why is she allowed to be deputy prime minister? Oh yeah, because we don't have democracy. We don't have the ability to vote the candidates that we want to represent us. We already have people to decide us. You have owners. You don't have choice, you have owners. And the owners want despicable people like her to be the shining light in the Trudeau era of Canada. And now that we have Mark Carney, a central banker that cheated his way through the primaries and got himself to become prime minister, this is what we get. You don't have democracy here in Canada. America doesn't have democracy. Canada doesn't have democracy. England doesn't have democracy. You have rulers that decide the fate of all the other countries. And who are you to say about human rights, Chrystia Freeland? Who are you to say about human rights, knowing the fact that this is the same woman who laughed about freezing bank accounts? Remember this? Remember Chrystia Freeland was asked when the Freedom Convoy took afoot in Ottawa, demanding a response to the insidious measures that the Canadian government was putting upon Canadians during the horrific days of the pandemic. I still talk about this. I'm never going to let this go, because this is a significant scar on the entire nation. This is the atrocity that our politicians completely slapped the face of the entire country as a whole. Here's Chrystia Freeland laughing about siphoning off the access to people's own bank accounts, so they're able to pay bills, so they're able to buy food. Just cutting it off like a light switch. And that's now become more common. By the way, it's become more common that they can now just debank you at any point in turn, without any consequences, without any investigation, no warrants, nothing. They can just say, hey, we don't like you. Boom. And it's because of stuff like this. Here's Chrystia Freeland laughing about this, giggling like a little schoolgirl.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information.
Yeah. Like we froze people's bank accounts, and we didn't tell people why, but we're just able to do that. All I had to do was write a bunch of terrible notes and showcase my horrible penmanship to the people at TD and other major banks in Canada, and they just froze the bank accounts. Because we just want to rule and psychotically control the world. We're a little authoritarian. And yet you go on to Bill Maher talking about how, we're surrendering our will to China, and their human rights. Are you freaking kidding me? Do these people own mirrors? Do these people own mirrors? Do they have any soul to self-reflect? That's why I hear people like Candace Owens talk about how these people don't have souls. And I strongly believe that now. This is why they're able to do crap like this. Because these people don't have souls. They don't have the recognition. They don't have the ability to self-reflect. To say, what I did was so abhorrent to my own people. Why the hell should I be allowed to go into television? Why am I allowed to be on these talk shows after everything I've done and talk about China in that regard? Why am I allowed to do that? Why am I allowed to giggle it up with Bill Maher and make light about the fact that we know our entire system is so satanic and evil, and then just allude that to we need more feminism? It's so sinister. It's so sinister. And by the way, they just announced, this is back in January 16th of 2026, but the federal government lost the appeal. So the Supreme Court has now confirmed that the federal government illegally, unconstitutionally did the Emergencies Act against Canadians. They illegally trifled on Canadians' rights and freedoms. They illegally did this. So Chrystia Freeland, to go on to Bill Maher and talk bad shit about China and saying that they're the ones complicit of human rights abuses, knowing this is just absolutely disgusting. And how Bill Maher is allowed to bring this woman on is even more abhorrent. Like, she's not even Canadian at this point. She's a traitor. She's a treasonist. She should be locked away in prison for the abhorrent stuff she's done. So here's City News after that interview saying Foreign Cabinet Minister Chrystia Freeland says the United States needs to get their act together when it comes to relationships with other countries. How about Canada gets its act together to focus on, I don't know, Canadians? Here's an idea. How about we investigate the Deputy Prime Minister, the former Finance Minister, that money laundered and siphoned away taxpayer money to a foreign country that now she is representing? How about that? How about we get our act together, hold people accountable for the awful things they've done to this country? How about that? Wow. And here's some of the article here. I'm not going to read through all of it because it's fairly lengthy, but it says former Cabinet Minister Chrystia Freeland says when it comes to the United States and its relations with other countries on the world stage, it needs to get their act together. Since its 2025 inauguration, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened several countries, including Canada, with annexation of tariffs on goods, creating an ongoing trade war. Again, as I stated, I feel like that thing is manufactured from the get-go. Could have resolved this. We could have easily got to the table, negotiated something, and now we're wrecking a, 200-some-odd relationship between neighboring countries? I don't understand why we're doing this. I don't understand why we're keeping this trade war going. Someone please explain that to me. Someone please explain to me why you have to act like idiots doing the chicken dance, telling people, elbow up, for someone like Mark Carney, who's deliberately lying to you. Freeland, fresh off her January resignation as a member of parliament, appeared on Friday on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. Freeland resigned after being appointed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as an advisor on economic development for Ukraine. Yeah, I noticed that on Bill Maher's show, they didn't mention that. They didn't mention a word about that. They didn't show that on the Chiron. They didn't say anything. They didn't say that, oh, by the way, you left Canada after you destroyed it and crumbled it up to bits to a foreign country. You're a traitor. You're a treasonist. Of course they're not going to mention that. Of course they're not going to mention that because Bill Maher likes having conversations with them. Conversations with Freeland. She's such a wonderful person. On the show, Maher asked whether Freeland agreed with Prime Minister Mark Carney about there being a rupture in the world order, referring to Carney's recent remarks at the World Economic Forum. Freeland called it a brilliant speech and says the world will be much poorer if the U.S. doesn't straighten up, adding a world in which countries rely on powers such as China is one where human rights and democracy no longer matter. Again, I explained how stupid that sounds coming from someone like her. Carney recently signed a deal with Beijing to import a limited number of its electric vehicles each year in exchange for lower tariffs on agricultural products. The world especially needs the world's democracies will be really much poorer if you guys don't get your act together, Freeland says. Because a world in which we need to start relying on China is not a world where human rights matter. This is not a world where democracy matters. Freeland's remarks come ahead of the scheduled review of the Canadian-U.S.-Mexico Trade Agreement, or CUSMA, this July. Trump's administration has suggested pursuing separate bilateral deals or even ending the agreement altogether as options are on the table. In the last year, Trump has routinely threatened to place tariffs on goods from Canada, saying his country doesn't need them. He also expressed interest in making the Great White North his 51st state. In recent months, he's made similar annexation threats towards Greenland. Now, I've said this before. I don't know if he's exactly serious about the 51st state. Because, again, this is what's so confusing about this. Like, you're saying you want Canada, but you know that the people are going to represent more leniently to the liberal side of things. They're going to more likely vote Democrat. So taking that country of Canada, turning to the 51st state, it's going to make the largest state in America, which means there's going to be more delegates, which means there's going to be more people represented in Congress, which means it's more going to swing towards the Democratic side just based off, election results. So does America really want that? And also the fact that you're saying that you don't want any of our resources. So what exactly is the purpose of swallowing up this nation as being part of the United States? Well, it serves the purpose of the technocratic agenda, which involves, making a technocratic state of the United States, Mexico, Greenland, and elsewhere into a mass surveillance hub. That's the only reason they're even still mentioning about this. And of course, with Greenland, there's, the mineral wealth and stuff, but more than likely, it has to do with the technocratic state that they're developing, part of the Golden Dome, as Trump would say, with Palantir, mass surveillance, tracking, surveilling, and turning us into this, surveillance state. It's basically going to be a digitized Auschwitz, where you're no longer going to be an individual with your own thoughts and feelings and autonomy. You are going to be a slave to the technocratic lords. That's the whole point of making the 51st state, as we've seen before. Let's not forget Chrystia Freeland back in 2015. So again, this is why I get so frustrated with this interview and why Bill Maher, the whole interview is so ridiculous. It's a mockery because Chrystia Freeland is part of this cult, part of these sinister people involved in trafficking and exploitation. So the fact that they're bringing up Epstein and she's like, hey, I don't really want to talk about that because, I don't want to bring feminism to the issue, but we need more feminism. Because I don't want to actually mention that I'm part of this club. I don't want to mention the fact that, by the way, I kissed the ass of George Soros as being a WEF Young Global Leader, which is basically another trafficking operation, if you really think about it. They bring these people to Davos to groom them to be effective leaders. Yeah, that's kind of human trafficking right there, don't you think? So remember, 2015, Chrystia Freeland, George Soros had this heart-to-heart moment because Chrystia Freeland wrote a biography praising this guy, George Soros, and they're discussing about how they're going to revolutionize European nations like Ukraine. Chrystia Freeland's little project, her Greater Ukraine project, if you will. This is what they said.
I first met you in Ukraine in 1990 when you began those efforts. It's actually amazing in Ukraine, the new Ukrainian government, the new Ukrainian leadership, everyone.
The one that we overthrew, the one we did a coup and did a color revolution, backed by the CIA, backed by NATO, backed by Victoria Nuland, so we could oust the democratic elected government to install this puppet government so we could take control of Ukraine. so proud of Ukraine. I'm so proud of that government. I'm proud that they're servants to the most evil, maniacal people on earth. That's Chrystia Freeland. That's Chrystia Freeland, who still gets offers to go on Bill Maher show. I like the conversations.
Who I know in that group has been touched somehow by Open Society and by Georgia, like literally, either people personally got a scholarship or someone, you know, their wife got a scholarship. It's a really remarkable thing.
Well, this was, for me, quite an experience to see this, and I didn't realize actually how big an effect it has had over a 25-year period, because those were students. 25 years later, they were leaders.
Yeah, doesn't that sound a bit like trafficking right there? That, you know, we get these children, we provide them scholarships, we give them these little rewards and whatnot, then we take them under our wing, and for 25 years we groom them, and then they become effective leaders. Wow! Wow! I wonder where Jeffrey Epstein got the idea to traffic people. Do you see why? Do you see why I get frustrated with people trying to cookie cutter all this? They're trying to make excuses for certain people and say like, well, no, you know, Jeffrey Epstein's a bad guy, but I can't dismiss Mark Carter. I can't do this. I can't. They're all in on it. They're all in on it. They're all in on it. This is the unfortunate reality people have to face. This is what needs to happen. I know it took a while for me to understand this, and it's going to take a while but this is the moment where people have to realize, they have to wake themselves up to realize there is no difference. There is no difference. Chrystia Freeland is part of this. George Soros, part of this. Donald Trump, part of this. Bill Clinton, part of this. Hillary Clinton, part of this. All these individuals are part of this. They're all connected somehow or another. And this is how leaders, this is how the elite keep themselves afloat. Just like we showed with that meme. This is how they keep themselves afloat. Because without the perverted, satanic, cult-like nature, without all of this, do you think any of these people would have been elected? Do you think they would have been elected by their own merits? Do you think if people actually knew who Chrystia Freeland was and how dumb she actually is? And that's not me saying that. That's former employees. Former employees that worked with Chrystia Freeland said she was this dumb. She was dumb. She's not smart. She's not an effective leader. She was a terrible journalist when she worked at Reuters. So why was she allowed to be the deputy prime minister? Because of this. Because she kissed the ass of George Soros. She got involved with the young global leaders. She was groomed. Groomed. Be an effective leader. Just like Justin Trudeau was groomed. Just like Mark Carney was groomed. All these people get captured into this cult, into this network. And you wonder why I am putting my foot down and demanding so much about the Epstein files, not because it exposes just Jeffrey Epstein being the creep that he is, but it reveals all this. It reveals the whole game. It reveals that conspiracy theorists are actually onto something when they say that the world is ruled by satanic monsters. Hey, you know, 20 years ago, I would have laughed at that. I would have said that's crazy. Mind you, I was probably a child then, so I didn't know much about politics, but, you know, they would have laughed at this. But now you understand how all this is connected. All of it is connected. And you look at throughout history, the JFK assassination, MLK, the riots on Kent State, the shootings that took place, all of this gets connected. 9/11, the war in Iraq, the Gulf War, all these different things come connected in some way or another when you actually looked into it. You actually look at this. It's like a web. It really is like a web that connects all together because the true rulers of the world, not Mark Carney, not Donald Trump, not Keir Starmer, not Chrystia Freeland, not Justin Trudeau, but the true evil, sinister overlords that control every aspect of society, they have everything planned out. That's why it feels like a simulation. It really feels like a simulation. It really feels like someone is playing a video game, and you've seen those gamers where they calculate their every move and they tell people, you know, this is what we're gonna do. It really feels like that. We're characters inside a game that is developed and controlled by sinister, shadowy people that we're not allowed to know. We're not allowed to know any information. We're not allowed to hear what they have to say. And it's all coordinated by different families, different mobsters that coordinate together, that calculate these moves, that manufacture narratives, that manufacture these scenarios to keep us in line. That's why this is so important. This is why it's so revelating. And this is why some people still have a hard time grasping at this. But trust me, when you realize how deceitful, how betrayed you are, yeah, you're going to feel angry, but you're also going to feel a sort of relief to understand, oh, this is why. This is why we live in this world. This is why. And you'll have more information and think accordingly to not get sucked in to this trap again.